So, hi everybody. I'm Clarence Madrilejos. I am with the Santa Clara County Democratic Party. I am their director of outreach and also their former director of endorsements. So I got the privilege to get some great people here. Actually, we're gonna have you some learn a little bit about the endorsement process in different categories. And I would like to have everybody introduce themselves. Let's start with Julie Lynn from the San Mateo Labor Council.
I'm Julie Lynn from the San Mateo Labor Council.
And Angelica Ramos.
Angelica Ramos from the Santa Clara County Democratic Party.
And this year's the director, chair of the endorsement committee. And John, and can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm John Mays, editor-in-chief of the San Mateo Daily Journal.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for everybody coming, joining us today. So just a little FYI, please keep yourself muted. You're coming in muted, and if you notice you are unmuted, I will call you out, and hopefully the folks who are chairing this endorsement committee can take note. Anyway, I wanted to start off, with Julie first, the South Bay Labor Council. Julie, it's I always felt like the South Bay Labor Councils are definitely are a big part of the Democratic Party, but also they're an example of the different constituencies that candidates may go after in terms for seeking an endorsement. So just tell briefly in terms of what the process kind of looks like for the labor councils and probably similar constituency groups that candidates may want to elect to participate in.
Sure. So, excuse me, first point of information, I am not from the South Bay Labor Council. I am from the San Mateo Labor Council. My South Bay counterpart is Jean Cohen. She is perfect and wonderful and glorious. And if you're a South Bay person, you should meet with her as soon as possible because your life will be better for it. But for our process, it's fairly similar to what South Bay does. So our formal process, we will wait for filing to close in most cases, and then we will send out questionnaires to all of the candidates in the races that our delegates have flagged for us to engage in. Those questionnaires will need to be completed and returned within typically a 2-week time frame if an individual wishes to be considered. We will do interviews, pardon me, in the bulk of the seats. Some of them will do questionnaire only. It kind of depends on the background of the race and the will of the what we call primary interest unions. And then once the interviews are complete, our interview committee, which we call our COPE committee, that is comprised of members of our affiliate unions that choose to participate in that process, will make a recommendation as to whom we should support. That recommendation goes to our executive board. Our executive board vets it and flips around their own to our delegate body. The delegates are the ultimate decider as to whom earns our endorsement, and it takes a 2/3 vote for that endorsement to be attained. However, there are better ways to go about this. You would absolutely participate in our process that I've just delineated to you, but I give what I'll call mental extra credit to candidates who start early. So I've already met with several people that are running for office in November that have come in to sit down with me and ask, what are labor's priorities? What are the things that are important to you? Whom should I be talking to? Whom should I be reaching out to? And at that point, I can give them an overarching rundown of our issues. I also refer them out to what we call primary interest unions, which are the individuals serving the jurisdiction in which they're running every day. So if it's a city, that's going to be probably your AFSCME or your SEIU. It'll be the Teamsters for your sanitation services. It'll be the building trades locals for your construction projects. It'll be fire for your emergency services. So that is an opportunity to have an early understanding of what the priorities are of the people that make your jurisdiction run day in and day out. And I think that's something that our candidates often forget. You're very focused, justifiably so, on the electorate, but the issues that the electorate has are going to be in many ways different than the issues of your primary interest unions that are in that jurisdiction. So make sure that you're taking a very holistic view of the location that you're looking to represent.
Okay.
Anything I missed, Clarence?
No, I mean, I know one thing that, organizations like, San Mateo Labor Council, South Bay Labor Council, the Realtors Chamber, on the other side of the aisle, they have professional staff that, are there to be able to facilitate this. How is that, how are they involved in terms of, trying to make this process go smoothly, in terms of outreach with the candidates, education with the candidates? Part of these live on sharing communities before, these candidates are not the most well versed on the issues yet. I mean, how does a organization like a labor council go about doing that? Make sure the candidates are ready when they're about to get interviewed.
It's not my job to make sure the candidates are ready. It's the job of the candidates to make sure that they are ready. So an important part of that is doing your homework beforehand. So if you're coming in to meet with an individual or an organization, make sure that you have spent some time on that organization's website, because that's a good way to get a preview as to what the organizational priorities are. Have looked into whomever you're meeting with so you can get an idea of what is their background, where might you share some commonality, what are some shared relationships that you may be able to take advantage of to vet out who you're meeting with. I am unique in the different groups that I work with on behalf of our labor council. So in San Mateo County, I sit on the board of our county chamber. I work closely with SAMCETA, our Economic Development Association, and that is rather atypical of the labor community. But again, it is not my job to prepare a candidate for the endorsement process. It is that candidate's job to prepare themselves and to take a proactive approach to earning it. So that is the people who find me and come out and proactively look to meet in advance of the process. I'm not going to go after a candidate that I've heard is running for office. I will not go after any candidates until after filing has closed and that pool is finite. So if they'd like to have a little bit of a jump on the process, they need to find me and reach out, and then I will connect them accordingly to the unions that I think would be most beneficial to them to have a longer conversation with prior to going through the official process. Another thing that we do to help candidates prepare to a degree, though again, after the closure of filing, is we have a candidate orientation program that we run after filing has closed, but before our questionnaires are due, that bring any interested candidates together, and we go over, this is the Labor Council, this is our community services program, this is what is expected of a candidate that both seeks the COPE endorsement and that attains the COPE endorsement. This one will be doing a presentation on what is a project labor agreement and why is it a benefit to your jurisdiction. And then we will go into breakout groups where the candidates will rotate through 25-minute sessions with public sector, private sector, building trades, and education to get a little bit more drilled down snippet of the more of a kind of a broad-based representation of the issues that each sector is facing. It also gives them an opportunity to ask questions and to get some clarification before turning in their questionnaire. And if they want to change answers on their questionnaire, they're able to do that as well. I don't consider a questionnaire final until my due date deadline has passed. So if you turn your questionnaire in early and it's not due for 2 more days, you can change it as many times as you want until 5 o'clock on the due date, at which point is mine forever and I shan't make any corrections.
Okay. All right. So let's shift over to the county party. And I know San Mateo County is gonna be a little bit different than Santa Clara County. When I was studying up on endorsement process of various counties in the state. So Angelica, just on broad strokes, can you just let us know what typically is the process for a county party's endorsement process?
Thank you. And I would like to give kudos to Julie for saying the word shan't before noon, my new favorite. So like I told you all, I'm currently the chair of the endorsements committee. I was appointed by Bill James, our chair, a little bit ago. So I've already run the process for the primary. I have a deep vested interest in the fact that I'm the chair of the endorsements committee, because I also fundraise for the party every year as one of the co-chairs of the annual event, and I also am the treasurer for both UDC and our party operations. And so I want to make sure our money goes to good Democrats. The process is such that we are actually going to I'm sorry, Bill, is everyone else can you hear me? Just please say yes. Okay, great. So the process has been particularly similar to what Julie had outlined. The filing deadline completes, and then we invite people who have turned in endorsement questionnaires for interviews. But on the back end, process-wise, we have a committee that is comprised of appointees from the chair of the party, Bill James, and someone appointed from each of the Democratic clubs that the clubs choose. So it could be their president, it could be someone else, whatever. But all clubs have the opportunity to provide representation onto our committee. In the past, in this past cycle, I had asked the committee to provide me with feedback on how they envision the process to go, because when you have that many people, you're like on the committee and that many people who are asking for an endorsement, there's a lot of coordination that has to happen to accommodate as many people as possible. For example, we have people on our endorsement committee who are a little bit older, so we want to make sure that we get them home at a reasonable hour and are able to drive or have transportation, just in case that they would not be able to do that. Another way is for us to work with other people on our committee who have childcare needs, potentially, myself included. And so we continue to meet the needs of our committee. That way that they're focused and able to conduct the interviews in a manner that is, aligned with process and democratic values. This year, we're going to do something a little bit different. There will be an endorsement committee. There will be an endorsement page where if you are interested in seeking our endorsement, you can download the questionnaire yourself and submit it anytime, of course, before the deadline of which the committee will choose this year. And that will be up shortly. I have to write the copy for it. So thank you to Bill James for giving me some grace period time. We also, during the primary, it's a little bit different from the general. So since we're going to be discussing the general right now, there are subcommittees of which the committee will be divided into geographically because of the volume of races that we will likely hear. So literally everyone and their mom, runs for school board, and there's like 32 school districts in the county of Santa Clara. So that would be, let's say on average, if there were 3 seats up, more than like 60 plus candidates potentially. The one thing that I will point out is that you must be a registered Democrat by the time filing closes in order to apply for our endorsement. We can't really make an exception for that. This is the Democratic Party. So if you're not a Democrat, why you come in here? So right. So those are some broad strokes of what to anticipate from the process. I will echo what Julie said. We provide a process that is clear as possible, and the website allows for people to know who's on our central committee and contact them if they need to. We do not give out anyone's information so that you can lobby them yourselves beforehand. I mean, you're more than welcome to, but our information's on the website, and it's not necessary for us to provide you with that information. Otherwise, we're all open to answer any questions regarding process. But like I said, we will have subcommittees for different parts of the region.
And I want to also keep in mind that San Mateo County may be slightly different in terms of process. But in Santa Clara County, the final decision maker is rested on the central committee. Am I correct?
That is correct. So the endorsement committee provides the recommendation, and then it's ratified at the central committee. This year we are aiming to do our endorsement interviews in the month of August for ratification in the September central committee meeting, in order to give endorsed candidates the opportunity to highlight that they've been endorsed by the Democratic Party.
Okay.
That's true in San Mateo County as well, Clarence. The ultimate decider is the party, and they follow a similar timeline to Angelica's.
Yeah. Okay. And are the thresholds different in terms of for the county parties in San Mateo and Santa Clara County?
I think that's a little bit getting into the weeds. What I would say is that you really should make your best case forward to the endorsement committee if you're in a, so let me real quick. If you are assigned to a subcommittee, let's say you are running for Gilroy School Board, you'll be assigned to the South County subcommittee. From there, the South County subcommittee will then interview you and then bring back impressions to the endorsement committee. The endorsement committee creates a recommendation that goes to the central committee. The central committee then votes as to whether or not you will get the endorsement. And there is a threshold, but it's really based on different maneuverings. And what I would say is just do the best you can and make sure that you are aligned with the party platform and the resolutions, all of which can be found on the website.
Okay. So let me so shifting over to the newspaper side, John, process wise, are they, when I imagine your process is a little bit later in terms of timeline, when is usually it starts in terms of when you start considering which races and candidates for endorsement?
So it's a week or two after the filing deadline. We'll start sending out invitations for our interviews. And then we kind of just jam through them as quickly as we can over, usually it's about a 6 to 8 week process. One thing that we're doing a little bit different this year is that after the primaries, so for state legislature and federal offices, we're going to be doing those in advance because we know who the candidates are. But we always wait until the filing deadline because we don't want to interview people who decide that they're not actually going to run. We want to make sure that the roster is set.
In terms of so do you decide on, because I know in my county we have there's certain races are extremely small and very specialized. Is there a certain selection races was in terms of which ones you will consider for interview, or do you consider everything as on possible?
We try to get every single one within our coverage area, which is from South San Francisco down to Redwood City and then also Half Moon Bay. There have been, so since SB 415, which is what switched the elections from every year to every other year, even years, right, to align with the gubernatorial and presidential elections. It's made it a little bit more challenging to get, there's more races than even years. There's no races in odd years, right? When it was spread out, it was easier to get to everyone. So on occasion, there are some decisions that we have to make. Usually it's special districts that we don't get to. We do all the school boards. We do all the council races. We do all the measures within our coverage area. Sometimes we can't get to special districts. That's been the case in the last 6 years.
And you do questionnaires and
we do questionnaires in advance. Usually when we send out an invitation to the candidates, we'll send a questionnaire, and inevitably it takes the candidate way too long to send those back. Sometimes it's after the interview. We usually ask them that they be returned before in advance so that it can inform some of the questions. We have separate questions that we ask during the interview that are on the questionnaire. The questionnaire is just sort of some general information that we're looking for, and maybe some philosophy and policy. But yeah, we ask for those in advance, usually about 2-3 weeks in advance of the interview.
Okay, great. Well, I think this is a rough idea of what the process is with these 3 major categories. But I want to ask this question out there, and I think something it's been part of endorsement committees and helping out candidates is viability. This is a topic that's been brought up numerous times on the community level and the full decision-making body. What's your thoughts about that in terms of, because when I was chairing, I always felt like the time to get to the endorsement committee level, they have done pretty much what's necessary to get themselves ready to run for office. So let's start off with Ms. Lynn.
Viability is a somewhat fluid term and kind of depends on whom you ask. But we have questions included on our questionnaire that try to get to that and try to establish at least a degree of understanding as to whether or not these individuals can run a competitive campaign. So we will ask, how many votes does it, or how many votes did it take in the last election for the winning candidates to be successful? How many votes do you think it will take this time for you to be successful? How much money did candidates in the previous election spend? And for you, how much have you raised to date? And how much of that is personal money? Because we're trying to see who is actually bringing in folks that are investing in their campaign instead of just self-funding and self-selecting, which makes me question how committed the community is to your candidacy if you're just trying to buy it out of your own pocketbook. So viability comes into play because nobody wants to back a lost cause, but there are also some places where we'll know offhand that a challenger, particularly if it's a strong incumbent, that a challenger has a lower likelihood of success, but we're making a point. So it really is going to be specific to what the particular situation is. But for the most part, yes, we would like to know, are you going to run a competitive race? Do you have a built-in campaign infrastructure? This doesn't have to be, are you paying a consultant a crap ton of money to tell you to call people and do a piece of mail? It means, do you know how many votes you need? Do you have money? Do you know where you're going to get money? Do you have people that are going to be out in the field working on your behalf? And do you understand what it takes to win and what pieces of that plan to win are going to be carried out by which person? Because we also sometimes run into challenges with candidates who think, oh, I got the labor endorsement, so now, like, what are you going to do for me? So I am not the campaign manager for anyone outside of collective labor. So making sure that our candidates manage their expectations, because what the labor endorsement means is also different from race to race, because to the earlier conversation or the earlier point made by John with all of our races being on the even years, the point Angelica made about having many jurisdictions on the ballot. There will be some races for us where endorsement is in name only, some races where we'll do some targeted mail or some general public IEs, places where we will walk and phone bank, places where we will just phone bank. So there is no same like package of endorsement for everybody, but every candidate that we endorse can use our name and our logo as they choose. They get access to our affiliate list so that they can hit them up and ask for cash, because I don't have any. They go on our slate mailer that goes to all of the union households in the county, and we have, I think now 102 affiliates and about 85,000 working people that we represent countywide. Then from there, it depends on what our members are most invested in, which translates to where are they going to give me volunteers that will go out and talk to people. But those nuances come later on, and I can't answer that right now because these candidate pools are not final, and our folks have not yet told me where they want to put the most eggs in our ever shrinking basket.
And also remind the candidates what IEs are, independent expenditures, that there is a wall in place for your own protection. And Angelica,
are you asking me to do that?
What was that?
Are you doing that, or are you asking me to do that?
No, I'm just warning the candidates. Make sure you don't. Yeah.
If they don't know.
Yeah.
So an independent expenditure, you don't get to know about. So it says, I'm going to spend money on your behalf, but I'm not going to talk to you about it because plausible deniability.
Yeah. Please keep that in mind. We don't want to see you on John's paper for something bad. So Angelica, in terms of viability, how does the party does they consider that? How much of a factor it is in the party's perspective?
Well, similar to what Julie said, it's fluid, right? And it's really based on the questionnaire. So the questionnaire, I really advise all candidates to review carefully. In particular, review our grid of issues carefully. All of the answers are on the website through our platform and resolutions. If you review all of that and make sure that your questionnaire is as closely aligned as possible, you will have a high likelihood of being considered viable. I echo what Julie said. At the beginning of our questionnaire, we do ask you certain demographic questions. There have been candidates who don't fill it out. I don't know why. It could be a myriad of things. They don't know how to find it, or, you know, like, which is like, how many people are in your district? How many of them are Democrats? How many of them are male? How many of them are female? What is the age demographic of them? And then a listing of your current donors, you know, who are your opponents? There have been candidates who have not filled out that first section, and I think that harms them because you're asking people who are volunteers to spend hundreds of hours in the month of August to review your questionnaire and to interview you. And so if you're not willing to fill out that first portion, and again, I don't understand why someone would turn it in, right? You know, so that, because that first section, when you receive the questionnaire, that first section is all about your viability. It truly is. If you don't have any infrastructure or any answers there, or you don't have a knowledge of what race you're running in, how many people, what is your win number, all politicos will ask you whenever you meet with us, what's your win number? And if they're like, well, will you tell me what it is? Oh no, I don't work for you. You want my win number. You can pay me, right? So exactly. And so what I would say is that it's important for you to make sure you have all of those ducks in a row, because those are all factors that go into viability. And the one thing that you don't want is to leave anything on the line. Like I said, the answers are generally all able to be found in our website. Something else that I will say is that it's the viability question is always we have an equity lens for our questionnaires, which I assume all other organizations who are represented here have as well. And what I would say is that the equity lens is to ensure that the committee doesn't unfairly, say someone is not viable for certain reasons. So like, let's say, for example, somebody fills out the entire questionnaire, but someone's like, well, I don't know them, so they can't possibly be viable. We do make sure that everyone signs this equity pledge. We make sure that we're not having some sort of weird bias where somebody who is like, oh, this guy has been in the planning commission and he does all these things and he's so great. And then there's someone who's a community leader who does not have planning commission experience and therefore not viable. Like that is not something, like that's a conversation with your committee on discussing what different types of viability looks like for different populations, regardless of gender or racial ethnicity. And so I don't know, I know our party has an equity focus, and it is my job for our committee to ensure that we're using positive language and equity facing types of language when describing our candidates.
Before I go to John at this question, is there, knowing that viability is such a big thing at the initial stages of the campaign, with Julie, is there anything else that the candidates should consider to try and get themselves ready when the time comes, besides the great advices that both of you have given so far in terms of trying to get candidates ready for prime time?
Sure. So let me make 2 points before they fly out of my fuzzy little head, and then I will come back to that question. So some things that were sparked when Angelica was speaking so beautifully about their process for the questionnaires. If you don't understand something that we are asking, these questionnaires are not meant to trick you. We are trying to get an understanding of who you are as a person, who you are as a candidate, and most importantly, who you will be as an elected official should you be successful. So if there is something, and I'm going to assume this is true of the Dems as well, if we ask you something and you don't understand what we're looking for, ask me, ask Angelica, ask their team, and we'll explain, because we truly want to know your thoughts. If you don't understand the question, you can't tell me what you think as to what the answer should be. So ask your questions. You don't get in trouble for asking. You actually get, again, it's my mental extra points. You actually get mental extra points if you have enough self-awareness to say, yeah, I don't get it. Can you walk me through this? And I'm happy to do that, because it shows you're ready to do your homework and you want to be prepared. Also, when you are filing, we're talking about endorsement questionnaires, reaching out. If you don't file with any information, we can't find you to send you our questionnaires or invite you to our processes. And speaking on my own behalf, I'm not going to work that hard to hunt you down. So if you didn't file with your email at the very least, or a phone number or something that allows me to find you, then yeah, I'm going to do a rudimentary Google search. If it does not immediately pop up, I will move on to the next of our 100+ candidates and send the information to them. Also, relative to filling out questionnaires, those of you that have consultants, don't have your consultant fill it out, because we're going to hold you to the answers that are on that paper, and we will absolutely come back to you and say, remember when you ran for office 3 years ago and you told me that you were committed to entering into project labor agreements, but just now you voted to go with a completely low road contractor and undercut quality workforce standards? Cool, let's talk about that. So we will hold you to whatever answers you put on that questionnaire. And if you are coming through our interview processes, we will ask you questions that are reflective of the positions that you took on the questionnaire. So if you didn't fill it out yourself, it is highly probable to come back and bite you on the butt. And as to establishing added layers of viability and understanding, something that we run into, I think, in a lot of circles is candidates that are ready to run, but not ready to win. So you might be somebody who is great at field and great at ground, but then you hit the dais and you have no idea what you're doing. So make sure that you are not only excited about the campaign and changing your first name to the honorable, but that you are ready to serve, that you have had conversations with, I'm just going to use city for purpose of argument, that you've had conversations with city staff, that you've talked to your city manager, that you have read the budget, that you have attended multiple council meetings, that you have read through those council packets that are very, very long, and in my opinion, very, very boring, which is one of the many reasons I will never run for office. But the biggest one being I do not wash my mouth with enough frequency. But you got to do the homework. You got to be ready to serve. You cannot be a lazy elected who just wants to be there for the things that are shiny and isn't going to put in the work. I've had candidates tell me, oh, I can't look at the budget. I'm not on council yet. Fool, that is a public document. Yes, you can. You just didn't try. So be both ready to run, ready to win, and more importantly, ready to serve.
Rick, I'll get to you. And by the way, Rick, like to say hi to everybody who.
Yeah, thank you, Clarence. I'm Rick Bonilla, the former mayor of San Mateo. And I think I get here by way of having experience with both Labor and Democrats. And I have endured many endorsement processes myself. And I've spoken with a lot of people who are trying to figure out how to do endorsement processes. And it's something that doesn't come naturally to people who have not prepared themselves and have not been paying attention. So I agree with a lot of what Julie just said, which is that you have to actually have spent time doing the right things to get yourself to these positions. You can't expect to just walk in and say, well, I think this, and have people vote for you. Or have support coming from organizations who do the supporting in these types of events. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I've got a bunch of questions I'd love to ask you, Rick.
Thank you.
So, John, I want to ask you also, since we had the discussion about viability, how much is viability considered in the editorial body's determination of what endorsements you would like to give out?
So, if I understand the question right, you're basically saying that if we believe that a candidate won't win, would we endorse that candidate? Is that it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I mean, you know, I've been doing this for a while, and there's nothing more annoying than talking to a group of very well-prepared candidates who have insight and ideas and have that bogged down by someone who just doesn't know what they're talking about and says alarming and unnecessary things that sort of shift the discussion where people are countering that person rather than discussing things. But that's the business, right? And so, you know, we can't have it perfect in any way. So our responsibility is to talk to the candidates who are running for office and ask them the questions that we feel are important. And we'll do that for anyone who's running. And that's our responsibility to do it. and then just sort of deal with that sometimes. So as far as viability, in our recommendation, we endorse the candidate who we think will do the best job. That's it. Whether we think that person will win or not, we endorse the person who we think is the best for that particular position. So I guess that answers it.
Okay, thanks. So Rick, since you're all the panelists, you're probably the only one that actually has honorable in his name at some point in their life. And you've probably gone through the campaign process from the beginning. And I think a lot of the folks here who are in attendance listening to us probably hasn't stepped on the campaign trail yet as a candidate or maybe a volunteer, but not as the person in prime time. Knowing time is a big factor in terms of how they know, because that's one resource that can't be renewed in a campaign. How do you kind of prioritize in terms of your beginning of your campaign of where do you focus your time and energy of seeking endorsement, seeking support, so that you are on the right track, at least at the beginning stages?
Well, thanks for the question. I think, first of all, it takes, you have to do a little thinking, some introspection. Make sure you're actually prepared to take what is a major step, that you're going to be willing to be there for the good times as well as the tough times. And first and foremost, everybody has to remember that elections and being in elected office is really just all about people. And you're going to get there with the support of people or not. And to do that, you have to rely on the relationships that you have formed over the many years that you've been here, paying attention, hopefully, to what's going on and not being a person who is reacting to a hot button issue that has driven you to, I'm going to run. That doesn't really work so well, although I think some people might get elected that way. But more importantly, it's about leaning on the community, asking the community of people you know and people you've been engaged with, hopefully, things that are important to the community, and asking them, to help. Now, if you can get help, then it makes the process a lot easier. You're able to then find people to volunteer to help you, people to make phone calls, people to help you organize the things that need to be done. But the time commitment is serious. People who think that, how hard can it be? It's just a simple, it's just a small town, right? No, it's major. Now, I have to admit, I have not run since the city of San Mateo went to district elections, which makes, the size of the electorate in each district equally the same 1/5 of the electorate overall in San Mateo. But there are so many things you have to take into account. And if you haven't been paying attention, it'll take you a long time to figure out where the levers are, where the buttons are, who to talk to about what. And the chances are you're not going to make it. Viability goes way down. However, if you have been engaged and you've done all these things, then you can have progress by swifter progress and more successful progress, I think, by working with the people who you have already been working with in your community, those people who who are of like mind, who see issues similarly, who are committed to the best outcome for the community has always been my perspective. Not always what most people want, because sometimes people get a little off track on some things. It has to be, I have always, in my opinion, and I think it has to be focused on what's going to serve the larger number of people in the community the best, right?
Okay, so I just on the sake of focus on endorsement process, I've been helping candidates in the past individually on the side. And I think a lot of times one of the biggest mistakes is not making the ask in terms of and over assume. What's the mindset that, because the type of business I do in my day job, there's a lot of over assumption, and when it does, it kind of kills us in terms of missed opportunities. How do you go about that? Because especially, I have a list, let's say the candidate has a list of 300 people they know. You can't know where you kind of set your priorities in terms of who should at least focus on trying seeking somebody's endorsement or seeking an organization's endorsement? What's the mindset when you start thinking about that?
So I think the mindset needs to be that, we're going to be making some asks. And if you're not a person who is comfortable with making asks, then you're going to be in the wrong business, because if you don't ask, you don't get. Okay. And the initial thing is spend time making a list. Okay. You're going to spend time making lists of different people for different things that you want to talk about. And I suddenly dropped a line of thought there. But then you have to craft the message, the ask itself, right? You want to be careful with making sure that you're staying within certain parameters to focus people on what you're trying to do, and not expand things wider or broader than they need to be. So that list of 200 people, which I think is about what I have, a list of 200 people that I really am able to rely on for a lot of things, is really important. And you have to take care of that group and keep them informed, try and establish a direction that you would like to move in with their help, and make it important that without them, that they know that without them, you can't do it, right? So I think those are the key points there.
Okay, in terms of endorsements, knowing candidates, I think some candidates are kind of shocked in terms of levels of endorsements. What can a candidate kind of expect in terms of, like, at least on an individual level? I know organizations are going to make their own decision, but what should candidates expect from individual endorsements in terms of the level of support they might be getting from a person or from an elected official or community leader?
Well, the level of support you're looking for from individuals is one where they're willing to stand with you on the issues and attend some events and make some contributions. With elected officials, most you're going to get usually is, they're going to say, yes, I endorse this candidate. And there may be some money once in a while, but not very often. It's usually a matter of lending their name and face to your campaign as a supporter. And then obviously, you're hoping to have, this is the person that you have known for some years, and the door is open, and the door swings both ways, so you can work together with people. You build those relationships by collaborating, by cooperating, by working on the issues of the day that we're working on. So I think that that's the reward you get from elected officials. But with your members in the community, it's by listening to them, working with them, being creative, coming up with ways that we can work through the issues, ways that we can achieve success. And you find that there are a lot of great ideas out there in the community that are going to help you get there. So I think that's really the key, is looking for participation and some money.
Okay. And I know, to go back to the issue about time, I know a lot of organizations, when I was helping out candidates on either as a campaign staffer or as on their steering committees, get a plethora of questionnaires and requests for endorsement and interviews. At some point, I feel like candidates kind of have to triage. How do you kind of figure out which one, not necessarily, first off, we're all going with the South Bay Labor Council's process, we get asked, and also the party's process. But as a candidate, when you start seeing all these other different groups, when do you kind of say, sorry, or doesn't fit your campaign strategy? And keep in mind, we don't have to go into the details of it, but just in broad strokes, so candidates can start thinking about this as early as possible.
Well, yeah, and there are now, I think, more organizations than ever before seeking to interview you, and with their own questions that are on their issues. So I think it's a matter of looking at what your issues, what areas that you have worked in, what areas you are comfortable working in, looking at your positions on the issues as compared to some of the organization's positions on the issues. So clearly, yes, you're going to work with the Labor Council, with the Democratic Party. Certainly here in this state, in this location, we're really, I say we because I'm on the long time with the Democrats. So we tend to dominate the politics here. So key is the Democratic Party, but Labor also. You're not going to get there without the support of Labor. I really believe that Labor brings a lot to the table, and the issues that Labor is focused on are paramount in importance, while the issues that the Democrats look at are broader, more social, and also key, though, extremely important. So there are some other groups that are focused clearly on some other more kind of off to the side kind of issues, right? And you have to weigh whether or not you feel strongly about those things, whether you have good positions on those things, whether this organization is going to be accepting of your position on these issues. And given that you only have a certain amount of time, you might not be able to do everything. You'll have to, like you said, triage and decide where to put your efforts in order to achieve the best result in terms of moving your campaign forward.
Okay, so I want to get some time for the audience to ask any questions before I close it out. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'm willing. Otherwise, we could close this out if there's no questions. Any questions? Feel free to.
I'm going to echo what Rick said, because our former mayor Bonilla said. The former mayor Rick, I call you Mayor Rick. The reason why is because I don't see a lot of Santa Clara County people in this call, and they're mostly San Mateo. But I will say that similar in Santa Clara County, you know, we are closely aligned with our labor council, primarily because the issues are almost exactly the same, right? The platform looks similar, and so you know, and the questionnaires are designed to get to that. And so, you know, I encourage you to please make sure you are filling out the questionnaires as accurately and as precisely as possible. I will tell you, we know when you use ChatGPT, trust me, we know. So especially if there's like little emojis in it, I'm telling you right now, we know it. So I just wanted to highlight that for people because it's very obvious.
Chris, I see a question from Chris Cohen.
Yeah, I was just wondering, so at least the election I'm running in is a school board election that's explicitly nonpartisan. I was curious how that intersects with, say, seeking an endorsement from a political party like the Democratic Party.
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
So that's a question that we frequently get, and most, if not all, races are actually nonpartisan, all up and down the ballot, because we have an open primary in the state of California. It's really about your values. If you want to have the Democratic Party's endorsement, then you will ask for the Democratic Party's endorsement, so long as you're a registered Democrat. You don't actually, you know, it's just one of those things where you don't have to come to the party and ask for the endorsement. Feel free not to, right? But that is really a choice up to you and your team. So I've heard that argument multiple times, but it's completely voluntary to come to the party and ask for the endorsement. You don't have to get it, right? And so but know that if you want the endorsement of the party, your answers and values need to align with the platform and resolutions that are outlined, whichever party website it's on. So I don't know if the San Mateo County Democratic Party has their information on their website, but the Santa Clara County Democratic Party has all of the stuff, all the resolutions, all the bylaws, all of the platform.
San Mateo County does as well.
So yeah.
And two additional points I would like to make, going back a little bit to a statement that Rick had made. So I respectfully disagree. I think the number one ground game in San Mateo County is not the party. I think it's labor for us. So the relationship between labor and the Dems in our county is different than it is in Santa Clara County, where Jean is vice chair of the party and head of the labor council. So it makes sense that they work very closely together. We in San Mateo, we have alignment on a lot of candidates because we end up for labor. I'll ask about party affiliation just because I get asked on the back end by the AFL on some of the races, but we endorse the people that are going to be the best champions for working families, regardless of what their affiliation is. But I lost my train of thought. So there's that. But yeah, labor. Oh, that was the other piece. I'm back mentally, sort of. Rockstar is kicking in. So yeah, San Mateo labor in our county, we run the premier ground game. Also nonpartisan, ask for party, but don't require you to be a Dem or a REAP, DTS, whatever, as long as you're going to be a champion for working families. But another thing for you all to remember is for any organization that supports you, we don't want to only see you every 4 years. because then it is clearly very transactional and you're not actually invested in our issues, nor really wedded to the things that you have told us you cared about if you, again, are only showing up every 4 years when you want something. So please maintain communication, maintain transparency, let there be a back and forth of dialogue throughout the term should you be successful. And another piece to that is if you don't earn an organization's endorsement at this time, don't become bitter and divisive over it, because you're probably going to run again. And also, none of us are going anywhere. So if you burn that bridge, number one, you're in many ways ensuring you won't be considered for another round should you run again, because we're going to remember that you lost your mind and we're very, very angry. But also, we're all very connected organizationally. So if a trusted colleague says, hey, have you met John Doe, what did you think of him? Well, came through the process, did okay, didn't earn the endorsement, but then lost his shit when we told him he didn't win the endorsement. Politics is a fishbowl. Everybody finds out everything. So, Phoebe, that's okay. That's an entire other issue. Hashtag Foster City, Phoebe. But no, conduct yourself in a classy manner at all times. You're not going to get all of the endorsements the first time out. You may not get them twice, but the third time, everything comes together and we are fully invested in your campaign. But keep an eye to the future instead of solely focusing on the present. Maintain those relationships, maintain those open lines of communication, and at some point in the future, your stars will align.
I will jump in and actually say that the relationship part is super important. I do lead a women's organization, the National Women's Political Caucus. It also endorses only women who are pro-choice, regardless of party preference. So sorry to the dudes, but like you get everything else. So I think that I will say that like relationships matter if you're running for re-election and you anticipate getting the endorsement again, because there are times when organizations will say, here are 5 times that you voted against us. And they like, oh, it's nonpartisan and all this. Being a city council member is nonpartisan, and it's like, but you're coming to the Democratic Party and you voted against Democratic Party platform. So why would we, so it's just one of those things where I just want to say the relationships of making sure that you are transparent, that you have that discussion with the party on like votes that you need to take. Not to get the blessing, but if you want to have like someone champion you in the process, you've talked to the chair to be like, look, I really have to make this vote because or I'm going to try and fix it or try and do something in the motion like that. That's just so key, because it's not in the bag if you're running for re-election. Like we have changed course on former people who have been endorsed, who have gone the other way, Sam McCarter. So I'm just saying, I just want to point that out to everyone.
I'd like to add
well,
Clarence,
there's two. There's 2 questions. I'm hoping we get the.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Tender, Parley, you have a question? And please make it short because we're almost out of time.
Yep. So this is real quick. I wanted to know, as somebody who's like a longtime Democrat but political outsider, I was told that if you're seeking a more traditionally partisan office, maybe at a wider county or state level, that you should, there's some etiquette to introduce yourself to the party. So it's not, you just file and you're this name out of nowhere. I was hoping somebody could maybe address that.
Angelica?
So where are you located, Thunder?
I'm actually in San Jose in Santa Clara County.
Okay. And then walk me, I know we are running it through, I may need to answer this offline, but like walk me through kind of the process that brought you to this question.
If you were considering running for a position, not necessarily in 2024, but any larger position, so not like local school board or something, some advice I'd gotten from somebody was that you should introduce yourself to the party before just filing and starting your campaign. So I assume there's some sort of informal etiquette. Maybe I got bad advice, but I wanted, as people of the party, I was hoping to get some clarification there.
So what I would say to you is that, like, I don't know if anyone has ever told you this, that before you ever run for office, it's advisable to speak to at least 100 people at minimum, right? And so I would say you blend in Democratic Party leaders in that to inform your decision. And so I wouldn't say like, oh, you have to talk to everyone in the party. What I would say is that, like, as part of the process for coming to the decision, you should be talking to as many people as possible who are leaders in the community, especially in the party, especially in labor. I even will say our local chamber, right? Talk to everyone, because if you don't understand the landscape for which you are actually running in, then you are likely not going to be successful. It's not about whether or not who you have relationships and who you're friends with or whatever. It's really a matter of, like, can you reflect to certain groups the how you got to the point of running for office, and whether or not you have a vision that aligns with that organization.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. And last question for today is Jeff Smith.
Hey, Clarence, thanks. So I was at San Mateo Dems last night, and something I really liked was Karen and crew had a sign-up sheet for volunteers. And I've always found in past experience, being able to volunteer with an organization is a way to really get to know them. And I'm just wondering if, like with what Julie was saying about long-term relationships or others, are there opportunities to do volunteer projects and get to know people in the organization kind of ahead of time before you seek the endorsements, or is that just unique to San Mateo Dems?
Who wants to answer that one?
So Angelica can speak for their Dems, and for us volunteers, and Jeff, silence. Silence. No bees are gonna eat you, you weirdo. Sorry, my girls came home from school. But yeah, so volunteer opportunities, it's going to obviously depend on the organization. I'm not sure what Jean has down in South Bay, but for us on our side, we run a monthly grab and go food distribution for families that are in need in San Mateo County. We're always looking for volunteers. So you're welcome. Former Mayor Bonilla, Rick's been out there many times. Rick is lifelong union member, so Rick has always been a supporter. But if you want to come out and help out as we do our food distribution to our community, always happy to have you. That's really the only like volunteerism for our labor council outside of phone banking and precinct walks. But if there are other things that come up, also we look for candidates that are interested in going through our processes. We'd love to see you at our annual fundraisers. San Mateo Labor Council invites you to join us on August 9th for our Coke banquet. In South Bay, Jean invites you to join her tomorrow for their brunch at McHenry. Love to see all of you there. Starts at 10 a.m. Going to be fantastic. Many mimosas. Please come. But it's not really like a lot of volunteer opportunities, Jeff, because most of the stuff that we do is going to be internal and member driven.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but it's a good way to really meet people and get to know the groups and the vibe and everything else. So yeah, thanks for that answer. Appreciate it.
Okay. So anyway, unfortunately we're out of time, way over by a couple minutes. But anyway, it's great seeing so many folks attending today, and it's great meeting the members of the panel. And if you have any questions about the processes, please visit each organization's respective websites, and good luck on the campaign trail. Thank you.